I'm going to ask you to do, even though we've got it here, I'm going to ask you to say and spell your first and last names.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Judi Robinovitz, Judi Robinovitz.
Excellent. As my mother would say, whenever she recognized a Jewish last name, because we're Jewish as well, she would always say, it's a nice Irish name.
Yeah, people say that to me all the time. And people who find me on the internet and who hire me from, across not just the continent, but across the world, and will often say to me, I hired you because you have a Jewish last name.
Well, us Jews stay close together. We like to keep it within the family. So you just mentioned something interesting. You said that you were a computer science major, or that you've got a computer background.
Yes.
And now you're a certified educational planner. How did you go from one to the other?
From point A to point B. Very interesting. I actually have degrees in mathematics and computer science, and I was basically embarking on my PhD at Harvard. Was engaged at the time. Couldn't stand being away from my fiance. Said if I could get a really great job, what do you think about running off and getting married? He thought it was a fabulous idea. I was hired by Educational Testing Service, so immediately said goodbye to graduate school, started work at ETS, and basically fell in love with the world of education as a business. So using my technology background, because I did have a master's degree at that point in computer science, I became a technical liaison between Educational Testing Service and the College Board. I was one of the early people involved in putting a friendly face on the College Board, because in the old days they said you couldn't prepare for the SAT. They finally came out and said, well, you can familiarize yourself with the SAT and perhaps maximize your potential on that test. So I was involved actually in leading the technology team that developed the first official College Board software to familiarize yourself with the SAT. Eventually went on and consulted to the consultants who they had hired to write their first test prep book, and supplied much of his information that was used for the strategy chapters for math. And it just became very natural for me to go into eventually a private practice that started out with SAT prep, eventually encompassed ACT prep, eventually had me hiring people, training them to prepare kids for these tests, and then going into college planning when students would ask me if a score was high enough to get into a particular college. I just started really doing all of my research using a lot of the connections that I had made during my 23 years at Educational Testing Service, and college planning was born from that.
That's speed.
Okay. I wouldn't exactly say that the College Board has an SAT prep course. What they make available online at low cost, I believe it's about $80, is roughly 6 or 7 real SATs that a student can take interactively, can download. When our kids prep for the SAT, they use only real tests. So they buy the College Board's actual book, the official study guide for the SAT. They also buy subscriptions to the College Board's interactive software, if you will, for additional tests for those students who are going to be doing more long-term prep. The strategies are strategies that I have personally developed, some of which were in the College Board's original book and continue to be in there. And because I think I've always thought of myself as a perpetual student. I could be in school forever. I adore school. I love the academic challenge, and have always been a natural test taker. In fact, I have taken the SAT as an adult and have gotten 800s in all 3 sections of the SAT. Haven't yet gotten the perfect 36 across the board on the ACT, but that's coming. So I think the combination of taking the SAT on a regular basis, having developed test-taking strategies that are not tricks but that are effective tips, making sure that our students prepare only with actual SATs and always building their confidence and building their familiarity with the test, those are the ingredients I think that make for an excellent SAT prep program. And similarly for for ACT.
Great. Now, we're just going to back up for a second. You are a certified educational planner. Can you describe what a certified educational planner is?
I guess I would start off by saying that I am a college counselor who works privately, who is not affiliated with any high school. So if I think back to when I was in high school, which is more than 40 years ago, and went into my college counselor, who at that point might have had a load of maybe 40 or 50 students going on to college and was well versed in colleges, I could sit down with him and he knew me because I had been at that school for so long and had plenty of interactions with him, and was able to guide me effectively into which colleges might best meet my needs, and then the rest was up to me. And I've taken that model so that as an educational consultant, I can get to know my students incredibly well. I start off, my first questions with the students are, well, Ron, tell me a little bit about yourself. Hobbies, interests, things that you like to do for fun. How do you spend your weekends? How do you pick your friends? And we might spend a half an hour or so just really schmoozing, and I'll watch body language. I'll also watch parents' reaction to what their children have to say. And once I feel that I've sort of established a connection with the student, we can then go into the numbers, you know, the grades, the curriculum, the test scores, the goals for the future. And I can put all of those things together with lots of other pointed questions that I will ask in order to determine a full list of colleges for a student to explore. And that list will have, might say it's like a bell-shaped curve, that there are a small number of stretch schools, a greater number of target schools, a lesser number of almost safe, because nothing is really exactly safe today. And my students will have a list perhaps of 20 to 25 colleges that I want them to go out and explore. And exploring takes many different forms. It could take the form of a website like, say, universitytv.com, or it could take the College Board's objective book, the College Handbook, or it could take the College Prowler series, which is a more subjective guidebook, or it could take some college visits, for which I would, of course, prepare them. But I work with my students to effectively explore the schools, narrow them down to a much more manageable number of colleges, and then guide them through interview process for those that do some interviewing, as well as the application process. And we're really clear with our families that their children are doing the work. We're there as a sounding board, as cheerleaders, as guidance counselors. And there actually are families who will walk away and say, well, you know, we can't engage your services because you won't write essays for our child. Well, I won't compromise my integrity, let alone someone else's, you know, integrity. So it is really being guidance counselor, cheerleader, parent, friend, confidant. The kids actually will almost sometimes use me as a psychologist. I'll get calls at 11 o'clock at night, you know, in tears about something or ecstatic about something. All my students have my cell phone number. They know that they can call me pretty much, you know, day or night. I'm like a teenager. If they want to call me at 1 o'clock in the morning when they have an inspiration, that's fine. And ultimately, I'm there at the very end when the students have to make their final decision, for those that haven't decided on an early decision school, in how to narrow down and actually pick the college that is the best fit for them. And actually, one of the best parts for me is that my students stay in touch with me, many of them, throughout their 4 years, and will often come back for guidance for graduate school, medical school, law school. And some of them keep in touch even longer than that. Well, very rewarding.
It's and I imagine it is because you know, you're taking in many cases some students who already have the capabilities and just need your guidance and support and knowledge, and some who have no direction whatsoever, and they're coming to you, and to be able to see that progress and the reward, you know, there is. You know, they get accepted to a college which some of them without your assistance may not have, or certainly may not be the right fit for a school for whatever those reasons are. I'm sure it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I would say there are two ends of the spectrum where it's particularly rewarding. One at the very highest end, and I do work with an awful lot of kids who get into some of the most selective schools in the country, and for whom those schools